Super Mario World is hands down my favorite 2D side-scrolling Mario title, and its pirated NES port is probably my most fondly remembered platformer knockoff, probably due in large part to my fondness for the original. In my development as a gamer, I would call it the single most important title I played, with Super Mario 64 being the next closest. So you might have an idea of how I felt when I learned about the Genesis/Mega Drive title known as Super Mario World 64. I don't find it too surprising that I discovered this game comparatively late to other pirate originals, as it's kind of obscure even in this already obscure subset of gaming. At the time of this video, the developer, publisher, and the time of release are all unknown, though some speculate that it was around 1998, the same year as Super Donkey Kong 99, which may have been developed by the same team. Now, of course I realize the obvious first question. What happened to Super Mario Worlds 3 through 63? And I must say that's a very good question, thank you for asking, here they are. Super Mario World 43 was a particularly controversial title for obvious reasons. But back on the topic at hand. The moment you start the game, the only real connection between this title and Mario 64 is established. It's actually not an awful sample, and it's perhaps my limited understanding of Genesis sound capabilities, but I was rather impressed that this team of pirate developers were able to get it to be so clear. I'd actually call it the standout audio bit from this game. The visuals aren't bad either here, with the rotating coin graphic. Neither the coin visual nor the samples are 100% seamless effects, they're just quality attempts, and it might seem like sort of a weird thing to dwell on for any amount of time, but it establishes something of a precedent of quality for the rest of the game. A precedent which is never truly reached again, unfortunately. Even at the title screen only a few moments later, the game's true colors begin to show through. The title screen uses elements ripped from both Mario All-Stars and Super Mario World. Note the blue Goomba. This is the last we will see of it, or most of the characters on the screen. As we hop into the first level, the promise of greatness is made instantly. The visuals, while perhaps not as crisp, so to speak, are the ones fans will instantly recognize as being from the SNES Classic. This is one aspect where the game outshines the NES port. Granted, the Genesis is more technically powerful, but even within the NES architecture, it has been shown that the graphics in the Hummer Team version could have been more accurate. Another thing that could have been more accurate in the Famicom title, but which is not approved upon here, are the controls. It's as I'm writing this script that I'm taken aback by how apparently genius the controls and physics of the very first Super Mario Bros. Game are. A game which predates this one by at the very least 11 years. Finding a satisfactory analogy for this reoccurring problem has always eluded me, but I'll attempt one anyway. Imagine that instead of feet, you had 100-pound slabs of rock, with rockets strapped to them, and once the rockets start up, the slabs of rock become ice. Yeah, it's a bit like that. When it comes to control criticism, with these bootlegs, it's the feeling of beating a dead horse that keeps making beating a dead horse analogies. Everything that can be said has been said forward and backward. The most important question to ask at this point is, are the levels suited to the controls? And here I have to give the game some credit at least for the first half. The use of death pits seemed notably restrained in comparison to some other similar titles. Much of that can be attributed to the pretty faithful recreation of the source material levels early on, but it really seems that in some cases the game designers were more generous than most in their layouts. One example that comes to mind right away is the second level. In the original, this is often the first level to give people trouble, featuring a heavier emphasis on platforming and the introduction of some tricky block mechanics. The game is able to replicate this increase in difficulty by tweaking the level design with smaller gaps that better complement this bizarro universe controls. And while the level design never really suffers from the death pit problem later in the game either, the level design does take a major hit in the second half. The game is only 6 whole levels long with a final 7th boss level, but when many people reach level 6 they're ready to give up. In earlier levels there was already a few moments of unfair situations, mostly at the hands of a heat-seeking poison mushroom that was added, but level 6 cranks things up to 11, featuring a brand new layout and a looping maze-style design. There isn't one thing in particular to point to for this level's difficulty. It's a mixture of difficult traps, a labyrinthine structure, and a cruel, uncompromising time limit. That being said, it isn't ugly and wouldn't seem aesthetically out of place in the original game. The last level is also very difficult, but for different reasons. It features one of the game's 2 bosses, the first being at the end of level 3 and corresponding to the source game's first boss, Iggy Koopa. The first boss is actually pretty well done. It's rather simple, just jump on its head until it dies, but there's some extra obstacles in there that add to the challenge. The final boss, on the other hand, is the worst kind of joke. While it does present some originality in its design as far as I can tell, being some giant terrifying ball head thing, not entirely dissimilar from the final boss of Mario 4 The Space Odyssey, but if that boss was cheap at all, this one is 99% off. The pattern it follows is all too basic, moving from one side to the other, attack, repeat. The issue is that the hitbox is extremely specific and only open for a few specific frames. Herculean levels of patience, or save states, will be your best friend here. Before we wrap things up, let's talk music. For the most part, it's not bad, because for the most part, it's stolen, perhaps most notably from a Genesis Jeopardy game. The reproduced Mario World music doesn't come off as being very convincing. None of the sounds after the opening coin sequence do, for that matter. The jumps in particular are decidedly not Mario. The developers seem to be so unsure of their audio work that the ending screen's music is also inexplicably Jeopardy. Extra bits. You can't kill the Koopas on the chain-linked fence. Checkpoints don't work. The fire flower is not present. Not only was the music used from Jeopardy, but also Tailspin and Super Battle Tank. You can see the scattered remains of Yoshi from where he was removed when they stole the Mario All-Stars Plus World title screen. Yoshi is nowhere to be seen. This game also goes under the name Super Mario Bros. 4. Overall, Super Mario World 64 doesn't do much spectacular, nor does it do anything particularly egregious. It gets points for being based on my favorite 2D Mario title, but it's certainly not the same as it, or even as good as the Hummer Team version for that matter. For me, the experience was a lot like meeting your good friend Bob again after not having seen him for many years. But instead of the person you knew, they're a weird Chinese knockoff named Borb, and their jumping physics are all wrong. Also Jeopardy.